Okay. Dear participants, it's time to start our last session. I mean, the session that is dedicated to communicating science, successful case studies. So I would like to pay your attention that this session is a little bit different than the previous, because this session will be focused on the case studies, so real examples like good practices in the field of communicating sciences, in biotechnology, research results. I know that you are maybe a little bit tired, but I really hope that we will be patient and very, very attentive to our presenters. So the first in the list in the afternoon sessions is online presentation. Is Mr. Marco Sarto, Senior Consultant, Communication Expert, Comin Partners, Italy. And with the topic like lobbying and advocacy for science and integrated communicative approaches. So I would like to our technical supporter, if we can start with this online presentation, if everything is okay. Marco Sarto, you are with us?
Yes, of course.
Yes, okay.
Nice to meet you all.
So thank you. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. Just a second. I'm trying to show you my presentation. Okay, let's try it. Okay, here we are. So, okay. So thank you very much to everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today. You all are giving us a better future with your work, and so I would like to thank you in advance for everything you do. Our seminar, our speech today will start with a specific question, which is, yes, of course, I try to add the presentation in full screen. Okay, here we are. Okay. So our seminar today, we will start with a specific question, which is why a course on lobbying for scientists. So today we will talk about lobbying and advocacy, why they are so important for you doing science for this amazing center and for this amazing university. Through lobbying and advocacy, it is possible to raise new funds, to stimulate new contacts, to promote researches, and to spread in society a kind of right approach for an informed science communication. A proper definition of lobby is mandatory. Lobbying activity corresponds to the practice of groups of pressure, which represent corporate interests within the institutions. And the final aim is to influence political decisions and policy-making procedures. Lobbyists so work with the aim of meeting the two main aspects between the dichotomy between particular interests versus the determination of collective interests. And in doing so, they try to activate a process of communication with decision maker. Lobbyist is considered to be born in North America in 1789, and as expert in particular issues, lobbyists can shape the decision maker proposal, providing them technical knowledge on what policies will lead towards the desired outcomes. So lobbyists try to provide, using other words, decision makers' knowledge between the adoption of a policy measures and their main consequences. Lobbying activity will provide the scientific community with valuable and effective communication tools. These communication tools will enable to facilitate and to stimulate fundraising activity and to promote institution and research. So to do so is not enough to do what lobbying is, but understand what is lobby is definitely necessary. I think that scientists should use an integrated communicative approach which allows them to manage their reputation both online and offline. And so in order to give you a brief outline of this seminar, I want to offer you or try to offer you some useful tools and information on how to communicate better, on how to communicate properly, and for sure on how to try to show and don't tell what you do and what your values. Those are the table of contents, and now we will start. Starting talking about lobbying, we must use one of the most famous sentences by the former president of the United States, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, who said, "Lobbyists are those people who take 10 minutes and 5 sheets of paper to make me understand a problem. My collaborators for the same problem take 3 days and dozens of pages." So this quote is quite funny, but it sums up really well the reality of lobbying. Speaking about lobbying, we have to speak about groups of interest or groups of pressure, which gain the competitive advantage or avoid a competitive disadvantage. And this activity is related to the adoption or for sure, the non-adoption of a legislative body. So we may say that a pressure groups could exist only if the institutional system provides facilities for the participation of citizens to the political processes. The word lobby is often used by the media in a non-positive sense. It is often preferred to use the synonym public affairs to indicate the activity to influence politicians, but to influence the decision-making process. On this slide, on slide 18, I use an image coming from the past, from the Occupy Wall Street movement. The man said, "I can't afford a lobbyist, I'm the 99% of people." That's a mistake because lobby has the ability to affect on everyone. And talking about lobbying, we may say that we could analyze this phenomenon using 5 different perspectives: the subject who influence action, the nature of the phenomenon itself, the tools used for implementing the purposes of the subject making lobby, the analysis methods in which the group's interests are regulated in democratic regime, and the role that lobby covers within the society. We may say that pressure groups influence actions, decisions, or even the policies of institutional representatives as legislators or members of government agencies and regulatory bodies. And this is important because the power of and the influence of pressure groups are related to the position given to the position that the pressure groups might assume in the social and constitutional context. Regarding this, we may say that in the American system, the legal framework of the pressure groups and the lobbying activity is in the Amendment First of the US Constitution, where it's written that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment or religion, prohibiting the free exercise thereof, abriding this freedom of speech or the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government. Meanwhile, in reverse, within the European system, lobbies are truly marginalized by political parties. So pressure groups started to be viewed as new actors and power structures of the state system. And this is a peculiar difference between United States and European framework and legal system. Doing lobby is the principal way through which groups operate and interact. The interest represented may be concrete or may be ideal, and even NGOs, charity organizations, public institutions can be categorized as interest group and can do lobby as well. So it's important to underline that there's always a good space for a good lobbying. For example, Amnesty International does a lot of lobby. So lobby is for good, is not just for private interests. The precondition for sure for the lobbying activity is the democratic legislative framework. So social group on this peculiar scenario are intermediate between state and between individuals. Lobbyist is a skillful mediator, able to enter into the legislative process and trying to edit contents if retained inappropriate in relation to the interest that he or she represents. So it's important to underline the political framework. It's important to understand that we all do lobbying, and this is what we are moving us to the second part of this small talk, because we may say that there are few types of lobbying: the direct lobbying, the grassroots lobbying, the coalitions, the party founding. But for you as scientists, as those amazing center you belong to, you can use an integrated communication and reputation management in order to tell your job, in order to tell what you do, in order to create values around what you're doing and what your research are going to see, are going to find. So this is moving us to the second part, because the first four types of lobby should be done just to society like mine, for example, because it's a kind of technical work. It's not easy to go alone to speak with politicians. It's not easy to do this. But if you try to communicate properly what you do, your researches and your values, you can do lobby as well. So integrated communication, in my opinion, is a different way to lobby, and a sound good communication can contribute to making the institution reputation strong and to simplifies, stimulates, facilitates the possibility of having a direct relationship with decision makers, which is true and so important. So you can do lobby as well, and this is our second part, because in the second part, I wanted to underline that the scenario we are moving on is not easy to understand. It's complex. It's not easy to understand, because uncertainty, both about sources and both about information, is the keyword of our time. We may say that people live in so-called echo chamber. We all have a lot of information. We often don't know what's the truth. Is truth one fact or another? Maybe politicians, civil society, opinion leaders who are not scientists do not have the right ability to understand the complex scenario. But the first thing to say is that science needs to be communicated. We must not say that we want to believe just in science, because science is not a belief, but is for sure a science. A science is an activity. So it's important to promote culture, to stimulate a scientific sensibility, to stimulate curiosity, offering listeners a method of reasoning. The traditional method, called the deficit method, is not good anymore, because no longer has any practical validity. Science, in my opinion, is not the simple transferring of knowledge from those who know or those who do not. it's the transmission of values, is the transmission of criteria. So it's important to understand this before to talk about information. We have to reject the scientific fundamentalism, which is something that is not good in order to communicate science. Scientists should not fall into the idea of scientific fundamentalism, because this mode of viewing science do not allow the formation of an informed public opinion. It's important to say that science cannot solve every problem at this very moment. Science is a kind of journey, is a way to solve problems using a scientific method. So science must promote culture, must simulate a scientific sensibility, foster rational and rigorous thinking. So we have to offer a method of reasoning. We have to understand that it's important to build bridges with civil society. And on this regard, we must underline the values of the so-called third mission, which connects the world of research with the world of business, labor, institutional, opinion leaders, and civil society. Because everyone could have the possibility to choose what they want to choose, and this is important. For a good communication of science, in my opinion, lightness is a crucial aspect. Journalism, storytelling, scientific research need people who can tell and write about science. Writing and telling in simple manners promote the acquisition of information, and this is our first goal. First of all, for a sound good communication of science, you need to be simple. And this rule is written into the American lesson, one of the most important books. I really love this book, written by Italo Calvino. Italo Calvino hypothesized for the communicators six kind of rules, which are lightness, rapidity, exactitude, visibility, multiplicity, and consistency. Those are the guidelines that every modern communicator must follow. For Calvino, lightness is escaping the dense network of public and private constraints. Lightness is the approach that science storytellers must take, because if we want to talk with others, we have to understand that everyone communicates science, but not everyone's have science. So it's important to understand this peculiar difference. On this point, it's important to underline one main concept, which is the concept of frame. Frame could be useful in order to communicate science. The frame is the track along which the discourse moves, public or private, as the case may be. If I say, for example, don't think of an elephant, what's the first thing you're going to think about? For sure, I'm going to think about an elephant. So it's quite easy to tell to media, to tell to civil society, to opinion leaders what we are talking about, and we can talk about everything in science if we are able to choose the right words, to choose the better way in order to communicate with others. So telling about science is a kind of exercise that requires to use words that suit the author, the topic, and the intended audience. It's important to understand who am I talking on. And going on this reasoning, we may mention another book which is truly important, Donald A. Norman, The Design of Everyday Thing. On this book, the author tried to highlight the gap between the functioning of human mind and most of the objects that everyday life asks us to use. Talking about designs, this book seems to highlight how trust or mistrust in science does not all depend on the reader, but on a poorly adaptive and effective way of telling about science. So it is important to understand that it's It's necessary to communicate properly. It's necessary to communicate well. It's necessary to adopt a good design of communication just in order to be understood. And on these few minutes that we left, I won't try to tell you about some elements which are important in the communication of science, which are numbers, estimates, percentage, graphs, diagrams, signs, symbols, metaphors, similes, and images. And I'd love to talk about metaphors and images because telling a story is important, and telling a stories is quite the most effective way in order to adopt a sound good communication, because we may say that metaphors allows us, for example, to generate an image in the mind of the listener. Metaphors like images is a rhetorical figure that transfers meaning from one term that resonates to another one that needs a kind of illustration. Speaking using metaphors permits in some way to use stories for capture the attention of who our listeners are. And stories, as we all know, are important in all communication, especially in the communication of science, because story responds to the principle of people don't like companies, people like people. We don't have a lot of time. We always try to work with the so-called cognitive saving. So why stories are important? Because they have the ability to bypass the so-called cognitive saving. So the fact that human brain tends to reason as little as possible just in order to conserve energy. Telling a story is the only way to point across. The story is like a fairy tale, allow you to remember something which could be strong, which could be not easy to understand, not easy to remember. And so to communicate science properly, the main question is, what's in it for me? What does my interlocutor want to hear? What does she or he really care about? So attention is earned, but it must be worn. And this is important to understand, and this is important always to have in mind. And for sure, speaking about what's in it for me, we can mention this amazing film with Leonardo DiCaprio. So, moving to the end of this small talk, we may say that story shifts the focus from abstract to concrete, allows the listener to take a position on issues that they do not know in depth. So, scientific data and science are the indispensable background for science storytelling. But for sure, we are talking about storytelling, so we have to think that sometimes, in some occasion, if I speak with politicians, decision makers, or with civil society, we have to understand that they should have the ability to understand us. And so this is important because when we talk, we have to try to be effective. We have to try to create a sound, good communication in order to create an emotional feeling, in order to create a story, in order to be remembered. And the last thing that I want to say you is show, don't tell, because it is necessary to use metaphors, not just to tell something. To stimulate mobilization, to promote a scientific culture, we need to talk in a concrete way, using concrete stories of science. But for sure, we have to speak emotionally. We have to try to create a connection with civil society, because science is important, science is our background, but we have to show people what we are doing, not just to tell people what we are doing. Show to tell is a great difference, is something which is related to the American marketing, but it's something that even you, even me, everyone can do with the work. So use metaphorical language to talk to stakeholders, public opinion, and decision makers is important because is something which is related to the adoption of a scientific communication style to talk about science. And a concrete example in the use of metaphors can be found in the political communication, for sure. And I just wanted to show you two main examples of a good communication through metaphors and images. The first one is Margaret Thatcher, a former English Prime Minister. She was showing the effect of inflection. An image could have the power of 1,000 words. The second one is Reagan, the former president of the United States of America. Reagan, on this image, tried to describe to America the so-called space shield. A shield means protection, means security. So he had this amazing idea to use the metaphor of the shield in order to assure consensus to the idea of an anti-ballistic system. So when you tell something about you, when you try to communicate with civil society, with politicians, with decision makers, it's important for you to show, don't tell. Take focus on your values, take a focus on what you do, take a focus on the importance of the researches that you are working on, and always show, don't tell, because everyone wants to hear stories, everyone wants to hear values. Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and as I promised you, dear participants, the topic that we discuss in this session is a little bit different. To be honest, we as a researcher discussed more maybe how to do the good research, qualitative research, how to get and provide good analysis and other things that was discussed previously. But now we have the possibility to discuss how to communicate our results in an appropriate way. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And I invite you, dear participants, to raise the questions you have and to use that we have experts in front of us that is ready to answer, please. Any questions? Yeah, Professor Victor Batnaru.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I am sure that everyone in this room found something important for his everyday activity in research. My question would be, could you give us examples of good, big scientists and good lobbyists? You gave us examples of politicians. I can't remember right now good in science and good in lobbying science. Maybe in geographical aspect, if you can. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, it's not easy to underline on these few minutes a good answer for your good question, but I try. Examples we can think on a lot of examples. I may say, for example, the case of let's talk about the vaccines, which are not an example of a sound good communication, but is something that I try to mute you. Sorry. Oh, no, I can't. Okay. I hear a lot of rumors, so I'm so sorry. For example, if we think about the vaccination campaign, this campaign was not made with a sound good communication, because we can underline an hype at the beginning of the campaign where maybe the vaccines are not enough for all the population, and then after few weeks, no one's had the ability to communicate properly with people who are not engaged into the idea of took the vaccination against the SARS-CoV-2. So this one could be an example of something which is not a sound good communication. For me, a sound good communication should start to understand what we are doing and what we are moving on. So who are our interlocutors and what we want to say. Are we ready to communicate to people, to communicate to the world, to communicate to civil society, or it's better for us to take a moment to be focused, to create more values, more stories, and then to go to the media, and then to go to politicians. So you have to think, trying to collect all your input, that it's easier to do something wrong than it's easier to do something better, because people have the ability to discuss you, to go against you, and you have to be prepared on all the area, on all the scenario. And it's important to understand that when you try to communicate a knowledge, a research, or whatever, you have to think on what people want to hear and why this research is important for them, because no one could have the ability to understand math, to understand diagrams, to understand science. It's important to tell stories. I try to answer to your question, which requires at least 1 or 2 hours of talking.
Thank you very much. Okay. Any questions? Okay. If no questions, thank you, Marco, for your expertise, for your presentation, and good luck in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention.
Yeah. Okay, according to our program, we invite Dr. Luc Allemand, General Secretary of International Year of Basic Sciences for Sustainable Development for the year 2022. The topic, the International Year of Basic Sciences for Sustainable Development. The floor is yours, dear doctor.
Thank you so much. Today I will really talk as the Secretary General of this International Year. And to begin with, I won't talk. Please, can you launch the video?
Curiosity about the world around us is what makes us human. This desire to make sense of the world is the driving force behind fundamental science. Stirred by this curiosity, each new generation of scientists adds to the pool of knowledge built up by previous generations. We are at a crucial time for the future of our planet. Now, more than ever, it is imperative to use this pool of knowledge to help solve the global problems we face and pave the way for a more sustainable development. And we must not stop being curious. Future generations will be inspired by the knowledge we contribute today, equipping them with the powerful tools they need to build a better world.
Okay, so virtually I could stop here my talk, but I will elaborate a bit. Okay. So this video has been made for the opening ceremony of the International Year of Basic Sciences for Sustainable Development that has been held 8th of July 2022 at UNESCO headquarters in Paris. So what are we talking about? So basic sciences. What do we mean by basic sciences? Of course, there is no clear separation among different kind of science, but however, we can give some definition. So this is curiosity-driven, inquiry research, and serendipity plays a role. You don't ever find what you are looking for. And very often it's a good point when you find some unexpected result and you have to explore it. But the second point, very important, it's long-term. It's not driven by short-term applications. And as it has been said in the video, the basic sciences, they fill the pool of knowledge that future generation will perhaps, we never know, because they are not application-oriented. So the future generation will perhaps use to develop applications to take challenges that we cannot even imagine today. And basic sciences are at the foundations of sciences, so they are useful for education, and they are universals. Their results are true everywhere, and so that facilitates open multicultural dialogue. So basic sciences, sustainable development, very rapidly, I just put this slide to remind you all that the United Nations General Assembly adopted in 2015 the Agenda 2030 about sustainable development, and in the Agenda 2030 there are 17 sustainable development goals. Well, many people talked about this, and to begin with Lawrence Bank yesterday, and many others. So, well, that's what we have in mind when we talk about sustainable development. So why an international year? So this international year has been proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly for 2022. But, well, perhaps some of you have heard about the pandemic, so we had to make some adaptation. So the international year began 8th of July and will end in 2023. But the point is that basic sciences are not always and everywhere, happily there are sometimes, considered as they deserve in the discussion concerning the societal, environmental, and economic development. I did like a lot what the previous presenter said. Science won't solve everything, of course, but it can help a lot. And it has to be recognized. Curiosity-driven sciences also, they re-enchant our world, and they make it worth to be sustainable. Some part of science are a bit like art, you know, to know we are in the cosmos, to know we are on a small planet, to know that the rules of physics are quantum mechanics, and sometimes it doesn't change our lives, but practically, but it's very. So these are the marvels of science. And so an international year concerning all basic sciences, it builds on previous scientific international years. So there have been several disciplinary scientific international years in the past, beginning with the, perhaps we can mention the International Year of Physics in 2005. And well, there have been the International Year of Astronomy, of Crystallography, of Chemistry. So we're building on all these previous important events. The main topics of this international year, well, enhancing inclusive participation in science. I think we already talked a lot about this since yesterday. Strengthening education and scientific training, and that's, well, this conference is partly contributing to this. Financing basic sciences, well, we also talked about this. And perhaps some less discussed point, but one important point is to generalize open science too. This international year is steered by a steering committee with 50 partners currently. Among them, I could say, like Spot Charlie, you spot the ICGEB logo, somewhere in the middle. So there are two kinds of partners: the international scientific unions, so led by the IUPAP, International Union of Pure and Applied Physics, and we also have the International Mineralogical Association, the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry, but also the International Union of Geography, astronomy, biology, etc. So that's one kind of partner, and the other main kind of partners are research organizations. So to begin with, IRD, which is the Institute of Research for Sustainable Development in France, but also the Chinese Academy of Sciences, also the Square Kilometer Array Observatory, etc., the European Space Agency. Well, you can see all the logos, and we hope to have more partners in the near future. I must mention, I didn't show it on the slide because it's impractical. We have over 120 today supporting organizations, and I can just say it's just news. The university here will become, we will formalize this in the very next day. It will become a supporter of this international year. And it's very important that we have supporters, that many organizations, so universities, academies of sciences, learned societies, even some associations, science-oriented associations, take this international year for themselves and organize activities. I'm coming on this. So we have flagship events. There's still a problem with the format. Anyway, so as I said, the opening ceremony has been held 8th of July. There have been already in the past 2 weeks 2 important conferences, one in Vietnam about science, ethics, and human development, and another in Belgrade in Serbia, the World Conference on Basic Sciences and Sustainable Development. And the next big events will be held in Morocco in February about basic sciences and technological breakthrough. There will be an event, the date is still debated, in Kigali, Rwanda, for a big event for Africa. And we're also preparing a big conference about open science in Honduras in June 2023. The date is not yet determined. And what you cannot read, but that I know by heart, is that the closing ceremony will be held at CERN, so in Geneva, 6th of October 2023. You know, we took the example of the Tokyo Olympics 2020. They changed, they kept the name and they changed year, so we're doing more or less the same. So we have still plenty of time to organize a lot of events in the world. So today we have 126 events already registered in our general schedule on the website, and this number is increasing, not every day, because it takes time to do the work on the website, but very frequently, and we hope to. Of course, we're only at the beginning, so we have new supporters every day also. So these supporters may organize new events, take new initiatives. So among these events, we have conferences, public outreach activities, webinars or series of webinars. Some organizations organize a series of more than 10 webinars, contest for students, for pupils, and also training session. I like this one, for instance. Some of you, those of you who are good at math, we have made the addition, and so it adds to more than 126. But the reason is that some events are entered in several categories. So why are scientists, you are more or less scientists, why are scientists concerned by SDGs? Well, the first answer, very obvious, is that some topics are directly related to SDGs. If you do research in biology, you have a good chance that your research is linked to, even if it's not application oriented, but you can see links toward good health and well-being, that is SDG 3, or to the SDG 14, life below water, biodiversity, and the second SDG about biodiversity, life on land, SDG 15. So, okay. On the other hand, trying to progress towards the SDGs we need new basic knowledge. If we want, for instance, clean water and sanitation for everybody on the planet, that is SDG 6, we need new knowledge in chemistry, in physics, in biology most probably also, and perhaps also in anthropology, sociology, to know how to implement all the discoveries. And perhaps the third point is that science, well, who said yesterday that science was not apart from society, but was part from society? Was it you? And that's an important point, because the science practice, the way you do science, can help to progress towards some SDGs. Well, the most often mentioned is gender equality, and it's not a detail, but also reduced inequalities. So inequalities between countries, between part of countries, between people in the countries. And also, and we here in Moldova, it takes a special accent about peace, justice, and strong institutions. So that's important. I insist a bit on this slide because that's important for all of you scientists. Well, I did like very much the previous talk about lobbying, because when people say lobbying, they always think that big industry are trying to push their agenda. But we should lobby for science, we should lobby for SDGs, and we should also, every one of us, and every one of you scientists should ask himself, how do I try to progress toward SDG? Myself, but also with the organization I'm working in, and well, of course, with the society as a whole, but science is not apart from this agenda. But of course, a decade of actions might be necessary to implement that, and well, that's my conclusion. We are today discussing with especially with the president of the current session of the United Nations General Assembly about the possibility to extend this international year into a decade. So don't think it's too late to begin to work for this international year. It's still officially going until, well, October or even the end of 2023. And the main point is that perhaps if this international year is an opportunity to give more momentum to some actions some of you had in mind or are already doing, well, we would have reached one of our main goals. So thank you. You can find us on the website, so at www.iybssd2022.org, and Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and even YouTube with this Nicando. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Dear participants, any questions? I would like to thank you, dear Dr. Bukalima, for this information about a great opportunity to make our results, scientific results, more visible. And I'm sure that our colleagues will join this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have presenters in an online way. Claudia Russo, ICGEB, Cape Town, Focal Point, Outreach and External Communications, Republic of South Africa. The topic is Science for Society, the ICGEB Cape Town story. The floor is yours.
I'm just it's getting the same. It's getting the same. Hi, good afternoon. We're just having a bit of a problem loading the presentation. If you could just bear with us for a few moments. Thank you.
Okay, take your time. Okay, in this way, to give time to solve the technical problem, we think that it's better to invite another presenters. Claudia, you are with us or not?
Right.
Okay. It seems to be just a few seconds, so we are waiting for you.
A nice lot of me. I'm going to just
Okay, so in this way we invite for next presentation because some technical troubles, but they will be solved during the next presentation. Professor Karin Sarkisyan, Managing Director for the International Biobanking and Education, President of ICGEB Austria, with the presentation about the modern biobanking for healthcare research, subtitled Trends and Transitions. The floor is yours.
Hi. Hello, everybody. I'm sorry, this presentation is from the morning session, but I was translating on the phone for two kids in the emergency board. So I'm very sorry, but a 10 years old and 6 years old life is more important. And I'm happy to see everybody here, and I'm going to speak about the modern biobanking. And it is a little bit less about the communication, it is a little bit more about how to do that. And ESBB is not in Austria, ESBB is European, Middle Eastern and African Association of Biobanks and Biomolecular Research, and it's a huge organization, and I invite everybody here to join us because we are cool. I would ask to people who are speaking about science communication afterwards to give me a grade, a note, if I did it good or not, and to give me some ideas how to do it better. But if I speak about biobanks, usually I speak to explain what that is.
20 minutes.
Oh, you know, I have a fan group behind me. Perfect, thank you. So usually I speak that it is a collection of knowledge like a library. But to use a library, you need to know the alphabet, the language, you need to be eager to read, and then you can retrieve some knowledge. It's the same with biobanks. Biobanks are also a collection. They are a collection of biological material. So in most cases, these are collections for human biological material because we are very self-concentrated as humans and on this earth. But there are also some plant and animal collections. And the guy who collected the very first biobank from 16th century is still with his skeleton standing there in his own biobank, and this is in the university. His name is not Merkel, but Meckel, and he's standing there still in that biobank in University of Halle-Saale. So if you are once there in Germany, go and see the very first biobanker who can talk about that in I don't know, astrophysics. We can see his bones there. Well, to find out what is a biobank with a definition, it's very difficult because there are so many definitions. The first came in 2002, then that was the one from 2016. In these definitions, there was no sense of data and ethics. And if you go through the Dr. Google or you look through different kind of the publications, you will find thousands of definitions. It's so horrible. They are all defined very similar, but different, because every biobanker is unique as everybody else, and they want to say their own word on that. The common thing about this is that we have some biological samples collection and corresponding data in an ethical frame. So corresponding data in human biobanks is usually clinical data or health data, yeah? And there is one very good definition that I like given by OECD, and why I like this one, because I was there that we made that. So this is a collection of biological material and associated data and information stored in an organized system. So there is a more exact definition here. So if we look to the whole picture, you see that you have in one hand the policymakers and the hospitals and so on, and in the other hand you have the researchers, and in between you have the poor people who are trying to make it work for both of them. So what is a biobank and how it is different from repository or from just a collection? Very important. These pictures, only the last one is done in Biobank Graz, in Medical University Graz. These are from different biobanks that I have been there. And the first picture everybody can recall if you are a medical researcher. People, this is not a biobank, this is not a collection, this is trash. Yeah. As this is trash, this is trash. Okay, these are pathology archives, but these are archives and not biobank. So never call that something that you cannot do. In a biobank, you need to be able in a very short time to say exactly for a very specific request what you have, how many you have, and how. And in this case, it is not possible. Well, this is Graz. And it is very structured, very sophisticated, and we are using even the whole height to store the samples. And now people who say usually that they have huge biobanks are colleagues, especially the colleague from Latvia who spoken yesterday. I mean, big biobank doesn't mean a good one. Well, in Graz it is one of the biggest in Europe, but if it is big, that means you don't use enough. If you don't use biobank for research, then you do something wrong. So the best biobank would be a biobank with 0 samples at the end. Yeah. So the challenge is that everybody is doing a little bit differently. It's not only the definitions are so many, but also the procedures are so many because everybody is doing a little bit better. And nevertheless, they have all some specific key components. And the first and the most important key component of biobanks is the population. Healthy population and the patients, if they would not donate their samples to a biobank, we will not exist. Just like that. So what we do, we very much communicate with our donors, we very much communicate with the healthy population. If you Google, you can see me very often in radio, in the public, and I make jokes, and they like that. I have no idea why. But nevertheless, they recognize the face, and they say, oh, yeah, we know she is smart, maybe she's speaking about something important, even though sometimes I really don't know what I speak. What is very important that knowing your topic was yesterday several times said already, it is also important knowing the limits of your topic. If you don't know the limits, then you have a problem about that. So here in biobanks, the limits are the ethical limits. And with the new law in Europe, with GDPR, we are getting really troubles to do open-end, long-term biobanking, but we still manage. And if you use all these biological samples in the medical research area, you can apply these for personalized medicine or precision medicine, some specific biomarker research, and also for public health, which is very funny. Well, these are kind of biospecimens that we have, and I'm very proud of this picture because we collect also some microorganisms, and we collect this microorganism in a setting of pathogen-host interaction, where the microorganisms are not grown outside of the body, but in the body, which is making our research more applicable and more translatable. And we have even several kind of biospecimens like hair, nails, milk teeth, and so on. Trust me, only with hair we have done a huge research on stress because you can find the cortisol in hair. And with the peaks of cortisol, you can really say what is the stress level in specific people. So never underestimate any sample. And what is coming out that the pre-analytical workflow in all these collections is the most important, this aspect you see a little bit, and in deep, it is so much work to do. So I just wanted to show a slide from OBBR. Being honest, you have always these asterisks in my slides, and you know from where I took that information. It's not only my information, but I like to give you an overview, so it is always cited. The OBBR has shown that we have the patient and the medical procedure, then the collection, handling, and storage. And the biobanks are actually doing usually this. And here is happening the magic of making the good science. Yeah? So how to make a wrong science, we know. There were several publications about, and it is even more horrible than you think because we have a huge number of retractions of different publications that has been done. And the retractions rate is getting higher and higher with every year, as you see here. And if you think that this is only self-reported, unfortunately not. 70% is just not replicable and is not self-reported. And if you think that these are just the small journals, local ones, no, you can see here we have Cell, Nature, and so on. So there are some publications that are retracted with a very high level of the research that should be actually not retracted, it should be good. But it is not. And one of the ideas why we cannot replicate the information that has already made by very known scientists is because we use the wrong samples and the wrong data. because the quality of samples and data is not high enough. And that's why we need to know the variables that we are using, and these are usually documented in a biobank, but never in a lab or in a clinical setting that the people are running without doing any exact documentation how they collected that sample or how many minutes to hours it was standing in a bench under the sunlight till they centrifuged, yeah? So here I have some ideas what we need to find out if we are doing sampling with variables, pre-sampling variables and post-sampling variables. There are many more. But for instance, anesthetics, for instance, antibiotica and so on, if we don't know, we cannot do the further research with that. But also the fixation time or also the clamping time is very important, because then you are having in that organ where you collected the sample hypoxia, and hypoxia is building up completely different expression patterns in the genetics as in a normal way. And there is even more. This is a publication from our university. What we have done is we took formalin and Paxgin. These are fixatives. If you are not pathologist, don't be offended. That is okay. And then we put it in pH of formalin or Paxgin, pH 6, 30 minutes, which is the first picture. pH 6, 40 minutes, pH 9, 30 minutes, pH 9, 40 minutes, and pH 9.5, 40 minutes. It's the same patient, the same piece, just cut it in a small aliquots. And if you see, you would have from the absolute negative, go home and live your life without any chemotherapy, without anything, to absolute positive, and only chemotherapy with radiotherapy together will save the patient. So this is not how science going wrong. This is how medicine going wrong. So what biobanks are doing, we are trying to make it better. And if I started biobanking, it was in 2006, and this picture was in Yama with saying that after 10 years, we will have one single test, and we will know which kind of therapy we need to give to with a specific person. I was so excited that I can contribute to that. I'm so sorry. The point is that we have personalized therapy like Herceptin and HER2 receptor, and I'm very proud that Biobank Graz contributed to that with more than 50% of samples that came from Graz. Nevertheless, it's one example. Well, I can bring 2, 3, 5, if we are counting the ophthalmology ones, but that's all. Unfortunately, although in 2009 Time magazine said that biobanking are changing the world right now, we haven't really changed big things. What we try to do, we try really to change, and what is happening with us is absolute flooding of data. We have so much data, and nobody knows if it is produced good or not good. Well, what is happening in biobanking with that? We are, can you remember the nice library? Actually, this is Stiftmelk in Austria, and if you are once in Austria, Austria has the most beautiful, nice libraries in the world. So go and see that. We are now in here where we have the books, but also the online, let's say, information that we are collecting, and I am not speaking about Wikipedia. And what we are going to, what is the trend is that the biobanks are going to be in silico, collecting the data that many people can immediately address, find out, find an idea, and then go back to check to the sample. And it is happening like from the big nitrogen tanks that we are used to see in biobanks, we are went to servers. And okay, if we speak a huge amount of data, artificial intelligence is immediately coming in mind, and everybody is asking, are you not scared of that? Using artificial intelligence for health. I mean, we use everyday artificial intelligence without knowing and recognizing that, yeah? And one funny thing, and Amazon corrected that after our university was showing that in presentations, but I have still a nice thing. Who knows what is this? It's a circular glass cutter. Huh, man? If you want to cut a glass circularly, you use that. In Amazon, you have always offers what to buy together with. And Amazon was usually offering these things. I mean, ski mask? You see the idea why people who bought cutter, they were buying. It's funny thing, but artificial intelligence sometimes knows better than we do. The horrible thing about that is this is a German Wikipedia, and it says the artificial intelligence has no definition. It is even worse than biobanks. We have at least 100 definitions because there is no definition of intelligence. And if there is no definition of intelligence, you cannot define artificial intelligence too. So this is something that we speak about, we are afraid of because we cannot define it. Well, there are some possibilities to define that. It's just for you, and I will leave my presentation so you can use that. What artificial intelligence is doing, what is this, who knows? A cat, yeah. For artificial intelligence, this is not an easy answer because artificial intelligence is going and finding several specific pieces and calculating that it is 92% would be a cat, but maybe 8% it is a dog. So human has a little bit different intelligence. So we are intuitive. We have an intuitive intelligence based on our knowledge, as the artificial intelligence do. But our intuition can make us really our life more difficult. So what do you think? Is this more light or this, or more darker? It's absolutely the same. We see in comparison. The same thing is this bigger or this? Absolutely the same. You can measure it with, I have had a person who stood up in the presentation and measured because he couldn't trust, but they are the same, absolutely the same. So we see in relation what artificial intelligence is not biased. Artificial intelligence just measuring, which is an asset, but the analogies that we can do, artificial intelligence is not, cannot do. That's why we need a human-controlled artificial intelligence. The combination of the machine learning tools and the human in control, doctors in control in AI, yeah, would be the best way to go. Well, we have tried to do that, and it was a huge project with 10,000 cases of colorectal cancer, and we were even in Euronews, so I put it there that you can see that I gave an interview to Euronews, and I can explain the things. Nevertheless, we have struggled to find that 100,000 cases in huge amount of biobanks that are in Europe because of the stratification, because of no standardization, because of lack of the specific data. So what the data came, and I have the association of that data with Swiss cheese, you know, with holes in there. A very good one, but nevertheless. So what we need to do and what we need to never forget, that biobanks are common good. And if we are not using the common good in a good way, that is bad responsibility towards our future and towards our planet. So the people are giving us their samples trusting that we will use that for academic research, for cooperative research, for even industrial research. And many biobankers saying we are not working with industry, and I don't understand that, because if I am giving the sample, and I am present unfortunately in Biobank Graz because I have had a brain surgery, and after my brain surgery the piece of my brain is still there. Don't clone me please, but it would be too much Karine for this world. But the funny thing is that people don't think that drug diagnostic measure is never produced in a university setting. It is produced in controlled pharma setting and in controlled biotech setting. So if we give the samples, we go there and we use the samples in academic research, then if the idea is good, a company is coming, there is a cooperative research with the company, and at the end, a company is making the drugs or the diagnostic measures or the biomarkers, I think. So don't be afraid. They are okay. Just keep them in control. And how to do that? I just wanted to show the Styrian government. Styria is the region where Graz is the capital in Austria. Has calculated that every single euro that they invested in the biobank and around the biobank came back in 2016 with 26 euros of taxes. And these days it is 5 times higher. So if you invest in a good research infrastructure, it is also good money. Well, Biobank is very multidisciplinary. There are working doctors, lab technicians, IT technicians, lawyers, and so on, managers, I like to say that, engineers, quality managers. And what we try to help researchers to understand that they do the research, they should be in a high quality, and somehow from bedside the idea to bench, and from bench it should go also to bedside. Otherwise, the donation that people did to the biobanks is for nothing. So biobanking is for a healthier world. And if you ask the biobankers what is the most important thing, they usually say the quality. This is a real thing. And the quality is really very important, because I very much offer you to read this publication. In US, almost 100,000 people are dying in hospitals because of misplacing the etiquettes on the sample, and they are getting the wrong diagnosis because just the name was wrong on the vial. So read that publication. Something like that cannot happen with biobanks, because biobanks have now new ISO, and there is also an in vitro diagnostic regulation in Europe, where even this regulation is asking for sample type and how to do. And if we ask what is important in a biobank, people think that it is infrastructure and it is education, and we educate people too. So we have a basic course, advanced course, team course, and several other courses. And we have the only Bologna-conform masters in biobanking, and we have people from several things. And I have written a book with Springer. Just buy that book, that would be nice. And what I want to say as a last, whoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times. These are something, and I hope I have written correctly. Thank you.
Thank you for this amazing presentation. Dear colleagues, please, questions?
I was expecting you will ask a question.
Biobank
Okay, we have very many requests. They are not always good. We check also the quality of the research before we give some samples out. But in Biobank grads, what is good, we have more than 20 million samples. So we are far away. But what is good, we are getting per year approximately the same amount of samples newly in that we are using for research, which makes us very balanced. So it's approximately 1 million coming in and out. Would be used for research, yeah? I love the question, our university. Our university was grounded actually in 2005 as a faculty. It separated from the Central University and became a university. And in the Shanghai qualification of the universities, we were very low. During last 10 years, we became one of the 100 best universities in the world. You know, top 100 is the medical university grads is in there. You know why? We have calculated all the possible connections to the research infrastructure, because we have not only Biobank as research infrastructure, we have a big facility of different core facilities, which called Center of Medical Research, and we have also animal core facilities. So 80% of that success is corresponding to the research infrastructures. So maybe that is answering your question. And we have a huge amount of cooperation projects with industry. So we are never trying to give just samples like that would be like to sell the native oil instead of benzene. So we are trying to refine the samples with our knowledge and to do cooperative research. It's not obligatory, but you cannot make it obligatory. That would be not ethical, yeah? But we have enough know-how to help people. And that makes us very desirable partner. Yeah. Nice dialogue, I love it. Theoretically, yes. It depends how good your project is. It should have a high level of uniqueness and innovation and clear-cut quality. Then why not? Just drop an email.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Karin. Okay. Dear colleagues, we go back into the program. I mean that our colleagues that present the topic in online way are ready. And we invite Claudia Russo to present the topic. The floor is yours, please.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for your patience. We had a bit of a technological challenge, but I think we're ready to start now. So my name is Claudia Russo. I'm speaking to you from ICGEB Cape Town in Cape Town, South Africa, and I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak today. My talk will be about science for society and bringing society closer to science, and we'll give you some examples about the ICGEB Cape Town story and some of the science communication initiatives that we've been running over the past couple of years. Before we start, I thought it would be important just to briefly recap a little bit about ICGEB communications, public info and outreach. I know my colleague Suzanne Kubavcic spoke yesterday and my colleague Marit spoke today a little bit about what we do, but so we can quickly recap. Concepts integral to the ICGEB mission to contribute to a vibrant scientific community and to disseminate knowledge, truth, and enthusiasm for science. How do we do this? We have a global team headed by Suzanne that spans across 3 components in Trieste, Italy, New Delhi, India, and in Cape Town, South Africa. We work together very closely with the researchers and the scientists to ensure coherent visibility of the ICGEB as an organization, as well as our activities. And then, of course, to find ways to best disseminate scientific information to a range of audiences. So before we move on to the ICGEB Cape Town story and a few examples, I thought it would be very important just to highlight that we're based in South Africa and our major funding partner is the Department of Science and Innovation. We refer to them as DSI. Now in South Africa, the idea of science engagement and public engagements and science for society is also extremely important. There are many policy documents where they have focused on this exact sort of strategy. The most recent one was the 2019 white paper on science, technology, and innovation. And in the strategy and the policy document, key concepts are continually mentioned. For example, the importance of public engagement in science, the importance of scientific institutions and scientists to raise scientific awareness and knowledge and literacy, the importance of bringing science closer to society and vice versa. And then, of course, for all of these activities together to promote to the public and to people the important role that science, technology, and innovation really has through its research and advances in giving a better life to all of us. So for the ICGEB Cape Town story, there's 4 examples I would want to share with you today, which shows the sort of initiatives we do and the activities we do here in Cape Town, as well as throughout the country. And the first one that I thought would be a good example is to talk to you about our participation at National Science Weeks. There we go, sorry about that. So what National Science Week is a celebration of science. It's a week-long activity. There's normally an exhibition on the weekend before, and the Department of Science and Innovation and the South African Agency for Science and Technology Advancement, known as SASTA, they invite different stakeholders doing scientific research to come together and to engage with the public. So we normally go up with a team of scientists as well as science communicators. And if you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, that's our colleague Dennis Ndolo, who's a biopesticides researcher here in Cape Town and also an incredibly talented science communicator. In this picture, he's talking to about a group of 500 people, and he's basically translating his science and his research into simple terms and talking to people about biotechnology and biopesticides and how it really has an impact on day-to-day life. In the pictures on the left and in the middle, these are activities with the Foldscope that my colleague Marit VM spoke to you about earlier today. It's this incredible magical paper microscope that really brings science to the people, and you can see some of the expressions of the learners. This is basically the amount of people that we talk to. It's not just school learners, it's also the public that are invited to come and engage with us. And they get to talk to the scientists about science and to ask maybe questions that before they wouldn't have felt comfortable to ask. They get to engage with the scientists. And you can see from some of these pictures, our team working and very much enjoying ourselves, engaging with the public and really having quite a lot of fun, again, with the Foldscope. The second example of a science communication initiative we started in ICGEB Cape Town is basically storytelling. We sat together about 2 years ago and we thought, how do we tell the stories about our scientists and our researchers that contribute to the work of ICGEB? How do we tell the public about it in a simple, engaging way? And we came up with the idea of making a feature story known as The People Who Make ICGEB Cape Town. If you can see from a lot of the snapshots that I've included in this slide, we had PhD students, postdocs, undergrads, PIs, technicians, staff members who simply communicated a simple message, who they are, what they do at ICGEB, what their research interest is, and how they contribute to the ICGEB and what we do as a research and an international organization. This started off very, very simply as a basic idea. It became extremely popular. We posted on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And in the following slide, I just wanted to show you an example how simple storytelling can have a massive impact. If you see in this slide, This is one of our new fellows from Sudan. Her name is Dalia Ahmed. She's here as an ICGEB PAX fellow, so a partnership with the UN Tech Bank and TWAS, and she told her simple story. You can see, on the text on the right-hand side. If you look at the analytics on the left-hand side, which I've highlighted, this post reached in Facebook alone close to 47,000 people, about 12,000 engagements, and more than 60 shares. A simple story, a simple message, written in simple English, nothing fancy. People were extremely interested. They wanted to know more about her. They wanted to know more about ICGEB. They wanted to know more about her research. And they were very interested in how her research basically contributes to making life better for people. So this was a great success story in how storytelling is very, very impactful. The third example of science engagement and science communication that we do here at ICGEB Cape Town is our school outreach program. We started this about 5 years ago. It's now formalized into a part of our calendar here at ICGEB. We host about 4 visits a year. And you can see from this slide, these are some learners from Tandokulo High School, a high school here close to the ICGEB. We work with quite a few schools. Now, the point of this outreach program was twofold: to bring science closer to society, but also to bring society closer to science. And if you can see in this slide over here, the students come, they're normally between 16 and 17 years old. They're life science students, so they learn it at school in their subjects. But they get the opportunity to be in the lab for the day, not shadowing scientists, but actually being scientists for a day, hands-on, doing hands-on experiments. For example, they hear words in the classroom like PCR or human cells. Here at ICGEB Cape Town, they get to see the PCR, how it's run. They get to see human cells under the microscope. And of course, they get to engage with our scientists and with our researchers. One of the greatest lessons learned of our school outreach program is that there's 2 sides of a coin. Firstly, of course, the learners love being here because they get to see real science and be immersed in the lab environment, and they get to ask questions, and their knowledge and their curiosity is sparked. But of course, for our scientists, we give them the opportunity, and our researchers, we give them the opportunity to practice their science communication skills. Because of course, in a lab meeting, a scientist will explain their work to their peers, but in a situation like this, the scientific knowledge is not at the same level. So scientists have to learn to pitch what they talk about, to communicate their message very, very simply. And we found that this program is extremely rewarding for both the learners and ICGEB researchers, especially in terms of public engagement and science communication. The fourth and final initiative, which I know Suzanne spoke about yesterday, is our ICGEB Science in the City, which is really a really popular science engagement tool and a public engagement tool. As Suzanne would have mentioned to you, Italy has run it successfully for many years now. And ICGEB Cape Town, we launched the first international edition in March this year. We picked a very hot topic, Mythbusters, discrediting misinformation in science, which, coming out of the pandemic, but not just the pandemic, we spoke about vaccines, GMOs, food security, cancer therapeutics, everything. It was a very broad topic. But it was very important because it ties in directly to the importance of science communication, the importance of the public being able to engage with scientists, and also the importance of scientists being able to communicate clearly and simply to the public and answer important questions. This was our panel of speakers. We had one of our group leaders, Lara Donaldson, talk a lot about food security and GMOs, and the gentleman on the Prof. Mosa Moshabela, he actually, during the pandemic, he played a very big role in the South African context in talking about misinformation in science and talking and communicating factual information to the public, especially in terms of SARS-CoV-2 as well as vaccination. So between the 4 speakers and the moderator, it was a great conversation. It was very, very dynamic. This is again Lara talking to the crowd. We had about 70 people attend at this event in the city, as well as about 120 online, so close to 200 people. It followed the normal format that Suzanne would have explained to you. There was a Q&A session, but then after the Q&A session, we also had a networking event. And we found that during this event, it was a great opportunity for members of the public to engage directly with scientists and ask them some questions and gain some clarity. So this was a really great event and a good example of a successful science communication initiative. Based on the success of the event in Cape Town, we've then rolled out Science in the City to Durban. This was just last month. And then again, we'll be taking it to other cities within South Africa. So these were the 4 key examples that of science communication, let's say successful case stories or initiatives that we've been running in Cape Town. What's very important to add, though, and this is just my final slide, is that science communication always evolves. And so we have to stay on top of it and find ways to communicate stories to people clearly and to be able to engage with people and to be able to come up with ideas to engage more with the public and increase their interest and their knowledge. One final thing before I end is that the ICGEB website is really, it's very much up to date. There's a great team that works on it. And I would encourage all of you to follow also our social media platforms, our Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. We update daily, and there's really great examples of other science communication initiatives and stories. So thank you very much for listening, and greetings from Cape Town to all of you.
Thank you very much. In order to enjoy the experience of ICGEB, I propose to show the video, ICGEB video that Susan proposed us to, yeah? Okay. And after, questions.
As early as January 2020, we were informed about this new pandemic.
In 2050, there will be 10 billion people, and we will have to produce about 60% more food than at present.
At first, I was very skeptical that we would succeed in a short time to give a precise answer.
As with every research project, ERASE was and is full of difficulties.
Because all people should have access to medicines of good quality, and because access to medicine is a fundamental human right.
Our research represents an important challenge to improve human health and defeat serious diseases such as tumours.
Organisations like ICGEB are absolutely fundamental for bringing nations together and using science to promote cooperation and sustainable development.
Thank you. Video was amazing. Please now questions about the presented topic and about the experience of ICGEB as a general and especially as Cape Town. Questions? If no questions, thank you, Claudia Russo, for your presentation, and we go on for the next presentation. And we invite to present the topic, the next topic, Professor Bogdan Ionel Tamba, Head of the CEMEX, Grigore Popa, University of Medicine and Pharmacy, Iași, Romania, Drugs and Pain, the CEMEX Experience. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, I'm hungry. I guess you're hungry too. So I will tell you a bit a story. So I hope it's going to be entertaining, and then you can enjoy the lunch. Basically, I hope you've been yesterday here because we had Professor Belli who gave us a really nice lecture about pain. So then that made my job easier today because I can just skip the whole physiology part of pain and the processing. And I'm just going to focus on the difficulties to treat pain in what we tried to do at CEMEX, at the University of Medicine and Pharmacy in Iași. And I'm happy to present you the new logo, which is inspired by the infinity column of Constantin Brâncuș. This is the new logo of CEMEX, and of course we also added to the name of Professor Mungiu. Pain, why pain, you would ask? I love pain, I did my training in pain, but it's basically because I think it's one of the most spread around conditions, chronic conditions in the world. So it's estimated that you would have probably around 1 billion people with chronic pain across the globe. And despite years and years of research, decades of research and billions of euros or dollars invested into that, we do not have a cure for pain. Why is that? And this is the only slide which you know, it's going to be something that you don't like, but it's because, okay, so you feel the pain, that there is some sensory input out there from periphery, but the problem is that pain is processed and modulated into the brain. And that means that basically you do have certain types of pain, which is the phantom limb pain, which exists only in the mind of the patient. So this is a painting done by a patient who suffered from chronic limb pain. He had his limb, his right arm amputated, but when he painted himself, his visual image was with a big right arm because he's waking up every night with a pain in the right limb. And so, of course, then when you try to treat that, it becomes complicated because you can't just focus on a sensory input because there is no sensory input. And of course, most of the data is from the US because they love big data. But actually, if you talk costs, chronic pain is more than $500 billion every year in cost for the society. And of course, that leads to the fact that there is a lot of interest in how to treat pain. I don't know if you've seen this. If you've seen it, then of course you're gonna smile. If you haven't seen it, this is like actually how we diagnose pain and we measure pain. And we just have scales from 0 to 10, for example. And in children, we use emojis. And this is a drawing that was used in the 80s, in the 90s, well before you had emojis in your phones. But you need to communicate somehow the pain with the pain level with the patient, or the patient needs to communicate that with you. And again, it's a very subjective measure. If the patient says, I feel a pain of 8, then that's what it is. You as a physician, you cannot say otherwise. You can't say, I don't believe you, because that's what he feels. Of course, there are more scales of pain. Just to give you an idea, the harshest pain to endure is a thumb amputation or a surgery without anesthesia, but then there is again all lower levels of perceived pain. Now, probably 10, 15 years ago, we thought we had a breakthrough, and then we discovered that what is called the congenital insensitivity to pain. And that was interesting because we identified some genes that were involved in that. So basically you have patients that never feel pain, right? And you would say, wow, that's great. But that's not really great because pain is also, gives you an information, gives you a sensory information. So people that suffer from this condition, they would cut their fingers, they would burn their hands, because then again, pain also can give you an information like, don't put your hand into the fire. But then we identified these genes, and then we discovered that it's tied up to a specific sodium channel. And then we said, okay, now we focus on the sodium channels, and then we will find the holy grail of pain. And then everybody will feel no more pain anymore. However, 15 years later, after tons of money were poured into that, and a lot of presentations, definitely better than mine, were presented, we discovered nothing. So we did not succeed in translating this sodium channel discovery and the genes in this particular condition to transfer it into something that is used for the patient. So why is it so difficult to actually get a new drug or a better drug for pain? Well, this is a concept it was presented, I think, during these days, the translation. And most of the times it's the forward translation where we say we have a basic research, go target validation, and we reach all the way to clinical research. But what we most of the times lack is what we call the reverse translation, basically the information that needs to come back from the clinic all the way back to to the basic research. And I'm going to tell you a small story. So there is a big professor in chemistry. He says, Bogdan, I have a new nanotechnology compound. It's really great. I incorporated ketoprofen. You take one pill and it's good for 3 days. So you don't need to take a pill every 6 hours. And I say, great, I want to test that. And I say, how can I, it's a white powder, it's always a white powder. So how can I dilute that, make it soluble so administer to the animals? And it says, well, put it into something with a pH of 1.5 and it'll be solved and then that's fine. I said, well, a pH of 1.5 doesn't help me because I cannot inject an acid into an animal. The animal will die. I need something that's more physiological, about 7.5. And it says, no, but if you put it at 7.5, my compound destabilizes and then there is no more tricky, sustained delivery. So, long story short, 3-4 years of research were thrown down the drain because basically the compound was manufactured or designed in the wrong way and never would have been able to even get to the animal models. Now, of course, how do you do the research for that? Well, I mentioned the animals. Most of the studies that we do are in rodents, and despite what you may believe or may not know, is that actually they did save more lives than 911. And if we talk about pain, you will be surprised to learn that there are more than 300 genes that suffer changes into a patient with chronic pain. So how do we still do the research? Well, we need to do the clinical trials. And especially for pain, the placebo effect is very critical. Because as you very well may know, well, if you're happy, you can ignore the pain. And when you try to measure analgesics, then placebo effect is becoming even more critical because keep in mind what I said at the beginning, pain is in your mind, right? So then we get to the clinical trials and the whole hurdles of development. But keep in mind that it takes you 10 years or more. You start from 5,000, 10,000 white powders. And eventually, after 10 years, if you're lucky, then you actually get to one FDA-approved drug. And of course, the cost increases exponentially. The more time, the more patients involved, the more trials, well, the more money you need to put in. And then this is how it's moving. You can see on the left the number of new medicine, new compounds approved. Okay, so you can see that the number is relatively the same along the years. It's just that the cost is ballooning. That's this line. So you started with under 10 billion euros, $10 billion invested every year in these compounds, and then you end up to $100 billion invested every year to get new compounds. And again, the pressure is extremely high, and the cost for society and economies is really high, because if you look at the R&D cost across the industries, then you see the pharmaceuticals are really high, and then even, you change your iPhone every year, right? And there is a new iPhone, it's like Santa Claus every year in September. And despite all this innovation that comes in semiconductors, a bigger chip, better chip, faster, whatever, they don't spend as much money as pharmaceuticals. But they manage to produce, a new iPhone every year, which we cannot say for a typical big pharma company. They cannot produce a new drug every year. And again, some more data. What you see here is the coming online of the biologics. Now, the biologics is a very interesting topic in drug development, but that's for another time. Again, if you look, for example, at retail drug spending by therapeutic classes, pain is there, and it costs a lot to treat the pain in patients. So that makes it interesting for the companies, but it's not as interesting as, for example, oncologics and diabetes. So of course, the more money the market spends on treating or finding a cure, the more money is invested into that. And pain is not really at the top of the list on it, okay? Of course, regional investments or regional intensity, as it was presented also here, varies a lot across the countries. So you can see, of course, the US is spending a lot more money in R&D in pharma versus Europe versus Japan. And then if you put all the rest of the world combined, then the difference becomes even higher. Okay, to give you an idea, and this is like 10 years old data, but like the scales did not change. You can see Apple that was spending 10 years ago, and you can see the total R&D spending of Romania, and then the total R&D spending of Sweden, and compared to the rest of the countries. And of course, then you can understand that Apple manages to produce an iPhone every year. Romania, I mean, that's where it is. But of course, I'm going to skip on this. The lunch is coming. But the point is, drugs. We need drugs. We need tons of drugs. And then sometimes, after years and years of research, you manage to find all these cures. And there's a lot of over-the-counter or prescription drugs to treat pain. So you may say, you know, what's the presentation is about, because we can treat it somehow. Well, it's not really that way, because, for example, one of what we thought at that time was the holy grail of pain treatment, which is the fentanyl, basically said, okay, it's very potent, 1,000 times more potent than morphine. It's very specific, so we can treat pain. We can treat chronic pain. Now, it turns out that even after you approve the drug on the market, you put it there, and then 10 years later, you look back. And then we discovered that, you know, there's hundreds of thousands of people that died of fentanyl overdose. Okay, and of course you see the OxyContin, which was the commercial name for that, and then you can see the sales, yearly sales growing and growing and growing. Now, if we go back just a little slide, what happened is, in the end, the company went bankrupt. They just pushed to sell the product. People were dying of overdoses. Drug addiction was really high. So it turns out that a drug we thought was good and managed to get through all the hurdles of the development phases, actually, it's not that good still. So what are the potential, directions for treating pain? Well, biologics, I mentioned, I think it's one of the possibilities, because the traditional pharma was working with a small molecule like the aspirin, and then we're going to biological development drugs, and you've seen some nice presentations yesterday about it. Nanotechnologies, I think it's another way of interest that we can tweak and manufacture better products using existing compounds. Then, of course, you can also think, nanobots, and I think we will see today, even if they will not be made of metal, and made of organic matter, but we will see today that we can treat diseases with that. What we need for it, we need people like you, not everybody. Like, we need the young people in this room. We need new Zuckerbergs. We need new Musk, the 20, 25, 30 years old people that are going to think outside of the box. We can't just reheat the same soup and hope to get innovation. We need innovation to come from the young generation. And then that leads me to the CEMEX experience. CEMEX is a lab that was founded roughly 40 years ago. Initially, it was a laboratory for enzymology. Then we went through various development phases. In 2001, we established the Center for Therapy of Pain, studying therapy of pain. In 2016, we relaunched and completely reopened the lab. And this is us in 2022, even with a new logo. How was the lab before? This is how it was. It was a historical building, had around 200 square meters. And in the 50s, it was used as a housing facility for foreign students. This is me with my Professor Mungiu, back in the 2010s, when I was dreaming of building a new lab, a better, much more equipped. And this is actually how the lab is now. Basically, we have, and I'll also tell you some numbers. We have, the full complete test development phases from in vitro to large animals to pigs. We have the best imaging facility, for example, for in vivo studies, including a PET MRI for small animals. And just to give you some numbers, the facility now is 10 times bigger than it was. We have 20 full-time researchers there. We have a housing capacity of up to 5,000 small animals. And what is not written here is that we will open within the biotech cluster. I'll mention about that later. We will open a new BSL-3 facility for small animals. And I mentioned the biotech cluster because we have two directions. First, we build the infrastructure at the university, but that's not enough because we need network, and we need local network to access the expertise and infrastructure that we have built. The BioRone, it's a biotechnology cluster founded more than 10 years ago. We have now 22 members, and encompasses all the significant actors in biotech and biomedical field. Why we needed to do that? Because this is how the cooperation most of the time is. So I'm going to biomedical, and then you talk to the chemists, and they're looking that way, and so on. And we needed a better way to communicate that. We even also did like a value chain analysis to see why we failed to do the translation, why we failed to get new drugs onto the market, to have better products. And of course, what we discovered is, yeah, we're really strong in R&D. We can create a lot of white powders. But when we try to validate, to verify that, that's where we're really weak. And of course, we're really weak at partnerships, international marketing, even not so good at clinical trials, because clinical trials you need to do large scale, so you need 20, 30 countries in a clinical trial to enroll the 10,000 patients that were mentioned, for example, earlier. But if everything else fails, and I'm reaching the end of my presentation, this is a proprietary photo taken by my late professor. This is the black bryony. So if you go to the market and we fail to develop anything, we can always recourse to the local traditional market where they have this route. Apologies for non-Romanian speakers. I'll give you some small translation. Basically, this route can treat arthrosis, rheumatismal pain, spondylosis, bruises, arthritis. Basically, it can cure everything. You just need to be patient and read between the lines. This is the contact data. Anyway, you can find it online with just Googling CEMEX. Thank you so much. And yeah.
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, and congratulations for the results you have. Any questions, please?
So in the clinical world, when you try to treat pain, the best way is to build dedicated dedicated pain clinics. Now, we don't have these today, not yet in our region. I don't think there is a dedicated pain clinic in Romania, but I've shown you the photo with me and my professor, and we have great connections with Israeli researchers and doctors there. There is a very well-established pain clinic in Tel Aviv. This is something that we would love to replicate sometime in the future. And a pain clinic, yes, can integrate doctors from various specialties, including psychologists, including psychiatrists, to give this multifactorial approach to how to treat pain.
Any other questions? Thank you, dear Professor.
Thank you.
Dear participants, in this way we finish the program for this session, but not so fast. Let me to announce you some, we change for you in order to enjoy your lunch. We change the time for the practical sessions that was scheduled for 2 and 10 p.m. So we will start our practical session at 3 p.m. in order to give you time to refresh your mind. And we are waiting for you for the practical session in 2:04 and 2:05. And the diplomas is waiting for you when you'll be leaving this room. If we are some persons that forget to register, please complete it. Thank you. And no, okay. So thank you to be with us and enjoy your lunch. Have a nice day.